Good morning and welcome to Sunday School. What you're looking at there is my signature put down on November 15th, 1975. And it was here in, well, close by here in Dublin, California. And it was, at, at the time, it was the inside front cover of this paperback edition of the Book of the Law. And this was presented to me on the occasion of my Minerval initiation. And it was presented by Grady McMurtry and Phyllis McMurtry Seckler, or Seckler McMurtry, or, well, she was married to Grady at the time. So anyway, this is my first book of the law. Okay. And it has quite sentimental value to me, as you can imagine. And I'm going to show you the little imprint on it because I want to discuss that with you today. This particular issue was privately printed by the OTO in Dublin, California, there, you see, in April of 1974. Now, I've told you this story before. I had this exact edition before I joined the OTO. As a matter of fact, I had this exact edition, and it was the one that I burned after I first read it. So imagine my surprise when a couple years later, or over a year later, I had a resurrected copy presented to me in a most ceremonial manner. Anyway, this little book, okay, has like 4 little introductions in it, written by Crowley. Okay. Now, nowadays, the presentation copy is something like this. This is, I'm not sure what year this was, but this is printed by the OTO, the Grand Lodge of the United States, publishes this beautiful little edition, okay? And as a matter of fact, it has a place, a presentation copy kind of thing. Presented to, the Valley of, and the date, etc. And this is a 2007 edition, so this is getting right up there too. But it does not have any of those introductions. It just starts right in with Liber Vel Legis. But it has something else. After the comment, that Class A comment, it has Liber 31, which is the Book of the Law, but it's the facsimile, Crowley's own handwriting. And that facsimile is where you can see that the verse sections that are included in the text of modern copies, like Unity uttermost showed, I adore the might of thy breath, supreme and terrible God. Okay, all of those things were inserted later after the dictation, but that's another story, another can of worms. Shortly after my Minerval initiation, uh, I think after my first degree initiation, which was in 1976, Helen Parsons Smith, who was one of the officers at my initiation, sent me this. Okay, look how thick and this is red Moroccan leather. Okay. She sent 2 copies. One we use for our Gnostic Mass, and one we use for our OTO initiations at Haru Raha Lodge. This one sits out. I just got it off the coffee table there and covered. And as you can see over the years, that beautiful red Moroccan leather there, because it's been sitting out on our little end table there for so many years, has started to fade in color. Now, it doesn't have the facsimile, okay, which is, that's too bad. But good photographs hadn't been taken way back then. But this one, I want to show you because it has sort of a history. The first printing, which I'm assuming, now scholars may correct me here, but the first printing was in 1909 in London. And then the second in 1936 in London, 1938 London and California. And I'm assuming that all of them carried these little introductory essays, if you will, talking about the Book of the Law. Crowley's original, here's the Book of the Law, but I'm going to try to prepare you for what it's about. And that's what I'm going to share with you today at Sunday school. The introduction. 1. The book. This book was dictated in Cairo between noon and 1 p.m. on 3 successive days, April 8th, 9th, and 10th, in the year 1904. The author called himself Aiwas and claimed to be the, quote, minister of Hur Par Krat, unquote. That is, a messenger from the forces ruling this earth at present, as will be explained later on. How could he prove that he was, in fact, a being of a kind superior to any of the human race, and so entitled to speak with authority? Evidently, he must show knowledge and power, such as no man has ever been known to possess. He showed his knowledge. Now, I'm stressing certain words, and this may or may not be important, but I'm digressing here. It's not Class A, so I can digress all I want. You see, knowledge is all capitalized, and power is all capitalized. Now, I have to think that that wasn't just consistent typos that Crowley let slide. I'm sure there are places where there were. But words like knowledge, all capitalized, is also another name for a sephira on the tree of life. Da'ath, knowledge. And power is also a sephira on the tree of life. Gebura, number 5. Now, I'm not going to presume to interpret what that might mean for you, but the words understanding, which is number 3 on the tree of life, power, mercy, knowledge, kingdom, foundation, victory, things, splendor, things like that, when they're all capitalized, I have to view as a little flag saying, I'm talking about things in a Kabbalistic way too, levels of consciousness associated with those Sephiroth. But I digress. He showed his knowledge chiefly by the use of cipher or cryptogram in certain passages to set forth recondite facts, including some events which had yet to take place, such as no human being could possibly be aware of them. Thus, the proof of his claim exists in the manuscript itself. It is independent of any human witness. The study of these passages necessarily demands supreme human scholarship to interpret. It needs years of intense application. A great deal has still to be worked out, but enough has been discovered to justify his claim. The most skeptical intelligence is compelled to admit its truth. This matter is best studied under the Master Therian, whose years of arduous research have led him to enlightenment. On the other hand, the language of most of the book is admirably simple, clear, and vigorous. No one can read it without being stricken in the very core of his being. The more than human power of Aiwass is shown in the influence of his master and of the book upon actual events, and history fully supports the claim made by him. These facts are appreciable by everyone, but are better understood with the help of the Master Therian. The full detailed account of these events leading up to the dictation of this book, with facsimile reproduction of the manuscript and an essay by the Master Therian, is published in The Equinox of the Gods. And we'll take a yearly look at the Equinox of the Gods as we get closer to mid-March. Okay, little introduction number 2, the universe. This book explains the universe. The elements are nuit, space, that is the totality of possibilities of every kind, and hadit, any point which has experience of these possibilities. This idea is for literary convenience symbolized by the Egyptian goddess Nuit, a woman bending over like the arch of the night sky, and hadit is symbolized as the winged globe at the heart of Nuit. Every event is a uniting of some one monad with one of the experiences possible to it. I'm going to pause just for a moment to see if you're grasping how profoundly fundamental those statements are. Nuit is space, the totality of possibilities of every kind. Okay, that's a big thing. But hadit is any point that has experience of these possibilities. the totality, space, the totality of all possibilities of every kind, all potentiality, one smooth, limitless space of potentiality, of possibility, and anything that could possibly take place in that infinite possibilities, any point of that is a hadith. So can you see how a circle with a point in the center is just a perfect image of these two concepts? Excuse me for digressing. This idea is for literary convenience, symbolized by the Egyptian god Nuit, a woman bending over like the arch of the night sky, and Hadith is symbolized as a winged globe at the heart of Nuit. Every event is a uniting of some one monad with one of the experiences possible to it. Quote, every man and every woman is a star, unquote. That is an aggregate of such experiences constantly changing with each fresh event which affects him or her either consciously or subconsciously. Each one of us has thus a universe of his own. But it is the same universe for each one of us as soon as it includes all possible experience. This implies the extension of consciousness to include all other consciousness. In our present stage, the object that you see is never the same as the one I see. We infer that it is the same because your experience tallies with mine on so many points that the actual differences of our observation are negligible. For instance, if a friend is walking between us, you see only his left side, I his right, but we agree that it's the same man. Although we may differ not only as to what we may see of his body, but as to what we know of his qualities. This conviction of identity grows stronger as we see him more often and get to know him better. Yet all the time, neither of us can know anything of him at all beyond the total impression made by our respective minds. The above is an extremely crude attempt to explain a system which reconciles all existing schools of philosophy. 3. The law of Thelema. And there's a little footnote. Thelema is the Greek for will, and the same numerical value as agape, the Greek for love. This book lays down a simple code of conduct. Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. Love is the law, love under will. There is no law beyond do what thou wilt. This means that each of us stars is to move on our own true orbit, as marked out by the nature of our position, the law of our growth, the impulse of our past experiences. All events are equally lawful and every one necessary in the long run for all of us, in theory. But in practice, only one act is lawful for each one of us at any given moment. Therefore, duty consists in determining to experience the right event from the moment of consciousness, from one moment of consciousness to another. Each action or motion is an act of love. The uniting of one or another part of Nuit, each such act must be under will, chosen so as to fulfill and not to thwart the true nature of the being concerned. The technical methods of achieving this are to be studied in magic, quote, magic, or acquired by the personal instruction from the Master Therian and his appointed assistants. Number 4, the new aeon. The 3rd chapter of this book is difficult to understand and may be very repugnant to many people born before the date of the book, April 1904. Well, it freaked me out, too. Okay, the 3rd chapter. That's why I burned my first copy. I don't get this, yeah. Okay. It tells us the characteristics of the period which we are now entered. I should have read that part a little before I went freaking out, because all you had to do is look around and see the characteristics of the period that we're living in right now. But I digress. It tells us the characteristics of the period on which we are now entered. Superficially, they appear appalling. We see some of them already with terrifying clarity, but fear not. Now remember, this is before World War I even, okay? And perhaps this, when the book The Law was dictated, it was before World War I and World War II, obviously. It explains that certain vast stars or aggregates of experience may be described as gods. One of these is in charge of the destinies of this planet for periods of 2,000 years. Now there's a footnote on that 2,000 years. And he says the moment of change from one period to another is technically called the equinox of the gods. And in this little essay, he pins that down to 2,000 years. In the history of the world, as far as we know accurately, are 3 such gods. Isis the mother, when the universe was conceived as simple nourishment drawn directly from her. This period is marked by matriarchal government. Next, beginning in 500 BC, Osiris the father, when the universe was imagined as catastrophic, love, death, resurrection, as a method by which experience is built up. This corresponds to patriarchal systems. Now Horus, the child in which we have come to perceive events as a continual growth, partaking in its elements both these methods, and not to be overcome by circumstances. This present period involves the recognition of the individual as the unit of society. We realize ourselves, as explained in the first paragraphs of this essay. Every event, including death, is only one more accretion to our experience, freely willed by ourselves from the beginning and therefore also predestined. This god, Horus, has a technical title, Heru Raha, a combination of twin gods, Rahur Kuit and Hur Par Krat. The meaning of this doctrine must be studied in magic. He is symbolized as a hawk-headed god enthroned. He rules the present period of 2,000 years beginning in 1904. Everywhere his government is taking root. Observe for yourself the decay of the sense of sin, the growth of innocence and irresponsibility, the strange modifications of the reproductive instinct with a tendency to become bisexual or epicene, The childlike confidence in progress, combined with the nightmare fear of catastrophe, against we are yet half willing to take precautions. Consider the outcrop of dictatorships, only possible when moral growth is in its earliest stages, and the prevalence for the infantile cults like communism, fascism, passism, health crazes, occultism in nearly all its forms, religions sentimentalized to the point of practical extinction. Consider the popularity of the cinema, the wireless, the football pools, and guessing competitions, all devices for soothing fractious infants, no seed of purpose in them. Consider sport, the babyish enthusiasms and rages which it excites, whole nations disturbed by disputes between boys. Consider war, the atrocities which occur daily and leave us unmoved and hardly worried. We are children. How this new aeon of Horus will develop, how the child will grow up, these are for us to determine. Growing up ourselves in the way of the law of Thelema, under the enlightened guidance of the Master Therion. And finally, the next step. Democracy daughters. Ferocious fascism, cackling communism, equally frauds, cavort crazily all over the globe. They are hemming us in. They are the abortive births of the child, the new aeon of Horus. Liberty stirs once more in the womb of time. Evolution makes its changes by anti-socialistic ways. The abnormal man who foresees the trend of the times and adapts circumstances intelligently is laughed at and persecuted, often destroyed by the herd. But he and his heirs, when the crisis comes, are the survivors. Above us today hangs a danger never yet paralleled in history. We suppress the individual in more and more ways. We think in terms of the herd. War no longer kills soldiers, it kills all indiscriminately. Each new measure of the most democratic and autocratic governments is communistic in essence. It is always restriction. We are all treated as imbecile children. DORA, the Shops Act, the monitoring law, or the motoring laws, Sunday suffocation, the censorship. They won't trust us to cross the street at will. Fascism is like communism and dishonest into the bargain. The dictators suppress all art, literature, theater, music, news that does not meet their requirements. And yet the world only moves by the light of genius. The herd will be destroyed in mass. The establishment of the law of Thelema is the only way to preserve individual liberty and to assure the future of the race. In the words of the famous paradox of the Comte de Finis, the absolute rule of the state shall be a function of the absolute liberty of each individual will. And all men and women are invited to cooperate with the Master Therian in this great work. And that one is signed OM, which is one of Crowley's motto, OM. But it's a supernal triad thing. So, but that's not a comment in Class A. Also, I think I need to point out that at the time of these writings, with certain of his terms, communist, socialistic, things like that, are spoken from his present contemporary observation of how those philosophies, if you will, or those economic systems were being perceived at the time. But anyway, because recent editions of the Book of the Law don't all carry those 5 little introductory essays, because, quite frankly, you got to remember, those aren't the Book of the Law. Those are his introductions to the Book of the Law, and therefore carry an entirely different significance as far as thou shalt not change the style of a letter kind of thing. Anyway, that's it for today. I know some of you are watching Super Bowl today. Constance and I will not be watching the Super Bowl. I've got important stuff to do.
That interferes with your nap time.
Plus, it'll interfere with my nap time. Okay. Until tomorrow, continue to be good to yourself, be good to each other. Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. Love is the
law. Love is your will.
Bye-bye.